Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, October 6, 2021, 6:30 p.m. here at Frederick School. First order of business, I need a call to order and a roll call, please.
Weedman.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
And Nash.
Here.
Okay, so that gives us a quorum. Next, if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, next is I need an approval for the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Miller.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
And Nash.
Aye.
Okay, and next is public comments. Is there anybody signed up for public comments tonight, either? Nope, okay. All right. Moving right along, we are now up to board reports. Any board members have anything to report?
Mr. Weeman?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to give a thank you to Courtney Doniger of the Grayslake Public Library, who attended our recent equity and inclusion meeting. So I know we'll get into more of a deeper dive into what that committee report sounds like, but I just wanted to thank her for coming and lending her time and talents to our committee. And then I also wanted to thank Sue for making arrangements for Triple I. So I know there's a lot of logistics and things that go into all this coordination and planning for our board and administrators, and I just wanted to thank you for pulling all this together.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay. We are up to the superintendent report.
Good evening. Well, I'm starting with some good news, and actually, Mr. Vipond, I have a graphic, if you could put that up there for us. Right, thank you. So I simply wanted to share the good news that throughout Lake County, we have a nice downward trend of the virus. And if you could take my little picture off the screen, then we could see the downward trend. Thank you. So the
important part.
Exactly. You don't need to see me. So if you look over to the right, you're going to see that although there was, things were going up pretty high for a little while there, they are starting to go back down. And that's a conversation that we've been having with the Lake County superintendents and the Lake County Health Department. They pointed that out to us, and I wanted to point it out to all of you as well. And also, that's all we need for that, thank you. I wanted to share how successful our SHIELD testing, that's again our saliva testing that we do every week in our schools, has been in our school district. And here's the specific data that I wanted to share with you. As you well know, parents need to give permission to for their children to go through that testing process. And we currently have about 90.4% of our students testing every single week. And that's a really, really strong statistic. And so I just wanted to share that really good news with you. That includes students who are vaccinated. If you remember back in the day, the thought was that only children who, or only people who have not been vaccinated should go through SHIELD testing. But that recommendation was changed with the variant, and so again, 90.4% of our children are going through that testing, plus many adults as well. And I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Lewis to talk about Institute Day.
So just sharing very quickly that this Friday is our full-day Institute Day for the fall season. Our instructional coaching staff and many other staff members are going to be presenting that day. Inside the district, we also have a few vendors and support people coming in for that day. The majority of the staff will actually be participating in a full-day expository writing training, and so it's connected to our rollout of new writing instruction. We're very excited about that training. Our middle school staff, the majority of them will be working on response to text. So again, from expository reading materials and how they can use that to share and to communicate what they've learned from reading. So we have a very busy day, and it's going to end with technology needs assessment, and I'm turning that over to my colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I'm excited to share that as work has continued since last spring and throughout the summer behind the scenes on our technology goal for the strategic plan, that some of that work is now coming to light and coming to fruition, I guess, on Friday. Over the past few weeks, we have been creating a technology needs assessment that will be shared with all of our teachers on Friday as part of Institute Day. Then in the coming days, next week, we'll also be sharing a survey with all of our support staff to get their feedback. The technology department certainly has an idea of where our immediate focus should be, but getting input and data from all of our staff will be greatly beneficial in creating a comprehensive master technology plan for our district. I will be excited to share much more information and those results in the coming weeks and throughout the entire planning process. And then I'm going to move on to another update with our Chromebook refresh for our 4th through 8th grade students. As you remember, this past July, the Board of Education approved the purchase of new Chromebooks to replace our current 4th through 8th grade devices. Our current 4th through 8th grade devices are coming to the end of their lease, and as part of that lease agreement need to be returned to the leasing company. Our tech team is in the process of going to all of our schools beginning last week and throughout the next couple of weeks and collecting all of the current 4th through 8th grade Lenovo devices, collecting those and reissuing a brand new device to our 4th through 8th grade students at that same time. As you can imagine, this is a very time-consuming process, and a lot of prep and planning has gone into it. And I definitely want to thank our entire tech team, especially Mark and Brian from the tech department, as well as all of our info specialists, as well as our building administrators, for helping make this such a smooth process for our students and our teachers. I'm excited to say that within the next couple of weeks, all of our 4th through 8th graders will have a brand new device that they will be working on. And then a final update relating to a digital equity grant that we are excited to share some good news about that. Last year, the district was awarded a digital equity grant from the state of Illinois. Funds from this grant were spent to help support the purchase of Chromebooks, as well as numerous other items that supported our students and our teachers during our remote teaching and learning, as well as our hybrid learning models. Last week, we received word from the state that we have been awarded funds again this year. These funds do have some specific technology-related funding requirements. However, I am extremely excited to have an additional $200,000 for our district to help support our technology needs across the district. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. Glickman. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're really excited about that news, so thank you. I wanted to make public to the board a conversation that Jim and I have embarked on regarding my evaluation, the superintendent evaluation. I wanted to share that at the conference that I was at last week, I went to a session about the use of an electronic superintendent evaluation tool. And a number of my colleagues, folks that I do know, are using that tool, and they were presenting. They all love it, and they talked about how their boards love it, because it's an opportunity for Board of Education members to in their own way and on their own time, to go in and interact with the tool, and that way the board president is not having to ask board members for feedback constantly. So it's a really very interesting tool. I shared out with all of you a sample of it, and we can have more conversation about that. And I did want to know I know you may not have had a chance to take a look at it yet because this just came up, but if anyone has any questions about it, I'd be happy to talk about it now. You probably haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Yeah. All right, we'll take a look. We have time. but I did want to mention it to you. And finally, I just wanted to comment that we have some younger than typical members in our audience today. And as much as I love to believe that you are all here because our board meetings are unbelievably interesting, I'm going to go out and make a guess that you're doing an assignment. Yes? That's what I thought. And where are you all from? The Rams, that's right. Now I'm seeing the T-shirt. Well, welcome. We're really, really glad that you are here. Did you all go through District 46? Some of you did. Some of you did. And so then you, did you go through Frederick School? Well, welcome back. We're really glad you're here tonight. Absolutely. And that's it for the superintendent's report.
Okay. Next is committee's report. We have a community engagement committee report.
No report today.
Nope. Equity and inclusion report.
All right, thank you so much. The Equity and Inclusion Committee actually met for our first meeting yesterday evening. Am my days running together? Monday? Yes, Monday. Monday at 6 p.m. we met virtually, and that was our first session post-summer break, so the cobwebs are a little fresh. As we oftentimes do, we start our meetings by reviewing our norms to make sure we stay grounded and connected to the reasons why we are there together, affirming those statements and making sure that if any of the norms need to be optimized or enhanced, that we take the opportunity to do that at the onset of the meeting. There was one or two that I believe got highlighted for the need for enhanced clarity, so we'll continue to work on that. And then we also had a call for membership. So we tend to have a little bit north of about 20 or so members on our Equity and Inclusion Committee. We had a smaller than usual group on Monday night. I think there was roughly 9 or 10 of us. And so one of the things that we recognized as a body is that we have new teachers coming into our district. We have a lot of new families that have moved into our district. So we wanted to take the opportunity to place an open call for membership. So Dr. Glickman in her weekly communication announcement, communicated that to the community. So for those community members that are interested in joining the Equity and Inclusion Committee, please take an opportunity to review that communication from Dr. Glickman and reach out to myself or Mr. Lewis or other committee members such as Mrs. Braden and Dr. Mack if there's any questions that anyone may have. And then lastly, we had a really great opportunity to engage with a special guest from the Grayslake Public Library. Again, Courtney Doniger from the Grayslake Public Library was able to join us, and we had a really rich conversation around pragmatic joint ventures that the library, Community Consolidated School District 46, as well as the community can engage in together, allowing us to ultimately educate, empower, and engage our community for the benefit of our collective success, right, and our students at the center. Then we closed out with talking about some topics for future. And so one of the things that we did not get to on our agenda Monday was the equity audit. So we'll take the opportunity during our next Equity and Inclusion Committee meeting on Monday, November 8th at 6 p.m. To take a deep dive into the equity audit work and discuss any findings and or next steps we may want to take as a committee. Again, it was a great meeting. I'm looking forward to our next session where we take that deep dive. Anything you'd like to add, Dr.
Well,
Goodman?
I wanted to add something, because we didn't have any time at all to talk about the equity audit at the meeting, I just wanted to clarify that we won't have results at any point, in November. So we are just going to be starting soon the whole process of collecting data and doing focus groups. So we were just going to outline all of that. So I just didn't want to leave anybody with the idea that we'd have results by then.
Absolutely, thank you.
But you wouldn't know that because we didn't have time to talk about it.
Mr. Lewis, anything that you would add? Ms. Brayton?
No, thank you. I think we have found our spokesperson because you did an amazing job. But I know that Lynn and I were also very happy that we have had a number of applicants already. Just in the short time that it's been open, we've already had a good number. And so we will find ways for them to even be part of the committee or part of the equity audit or some way be involved, because we want to grab hold of volunteers and have them help our district.
Absolutely, thank you. My colleague, Mrs. Brayton, anything additional?
Nothing to add except to echo your thanks to the Grayslake Public Library and for the partnership. You know, we've all been looking for ways to partner, and so, you know, to have the library come to us and say, you know, let's do something was awesome. So thanks again.
Good deal, thank you. Dr. Glickman?
Okay, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Braden,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. Okay, on to our one and only action item for tonight. We need a motion to approve the website refresh with Schools by Floodlight, which is what was discussed at our last board meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Anybody have any other discussions they want to have with this?
I had a point of clarity that I just wanted to make sure that I understood before we went to vote. Part of the discussion during the last board meeting spoke about like step level, I guess, packages, for lack of a better word, that we could acquire as opposed to kind of soup to nuts. Did we get any additional detail as to if we were starting out with like a basic solution at this time and then looking to be progressive, or are we doing the soup to nuts package?
Want to come up?
Yeah, I guess I would say that the package that we still have on the proposal is the kind of the package to move us forward with a robust website package to lead us into the next 5 years and meet our needs now and in the future. The work and the details kind of in the design, and as we talked about a couple weeks ago, the amount of impact and support from Leslie in that process will, and as not just Leslie, but the district in helping with some of the designing and the creation, will still be able to help scale some of that back potentially. But to start, this is kind of our, well, I'll call it our base package, but also the all-in model that I still, while it may seem extravagant, I truly do not believe that it is extravagant. This is what I feel confident in meeting our needs for our district. So comparing it on the Cadillac to the Chevy, yeah, you could have that discussion, but I feel like this is a good landing spot for us moving forward.
All right, thanks for the clarity and remembering the analogy.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? No?
I have one. Chris, is there a deadline for, do you need this decision tonight, or could we wait till after the Finance Committee meeting in November, or is that not an option?
I'll answer that in kind of two ways. Is there a set deadline? No. The launch date that makes sense to launch a school district website is over the summer. And in order to hit next summer, as strange as that may sound, the work really does need to begin sooner rather than later. The Leslie and I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and in fact, Dr. Glickman and Leslie and I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago because we pushed it a couple more meetings from where we really wanted it to bring it forward to the board. And at that time, I was like, okay, now that timeline to launch in the summer just gets tighter and tighter each time that we push it. So is there truly a deadline? Hey, if we don't approve tonight, it's just not going to happen? No, and in all honesty, that is not the case. But it starts putting a lot more stress on our department and on our vendor to make that launch happen.
Okay. Roll call?
Weedman,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, next is unfinished business. There's nothing there listed, but I know we have appointment of board, new board member coming up, so that'll have to go on there at some point. We'll have to discuss about interview process. I'll probably do some of that tonight. As of now, we have 9 people that have applied for the one open spot. So I think our plan to try and get them all done in one night, as far as interviewing, is probably not going to work very well. We may need to find a second date to do so, unless, Tamika or Jason, do you know what's the earliest time you can be here for interviews? I think they're the two that probably have the greatest concern, right? Do you have a time? Yeah, currently, yeah. Christy, do you have a conflict from getting here earlier in the day?
Give me 1 second.
Okay. Either that or we're going to need to find a second date to do interviews.
Jim, I also have a potential meeting that's going to go till 5 that day, at the earliest 4, and then potentially till 5, so.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 for me as well.
4. So we could gain an hour if we could get it at 5, right? Can you get here by 5? Okay. Well, we'll have to see if we can see what type of schedule we're going to need to do.
Yeah,
Try and-
I could let you know, this is a hold on my calendar, so I could let you know
Okay.
if it falls off, then I'd be done at 4 too.
Okay. All right, so we'll have to put out feelers for everybody tonight and see, so we can try and get some scheduling done for the 9 candidates to come in. The other question I had for the board, I think typically we did 30 minutes for interviews. We can probably potentially bring it down to 20 minutes if the board is comfortable with that. That'll give us a little more time to get them through the night and then give us some time to debate afterwards. Or do you want to stick with the 30 minutes?
I'm good with 20. That's fine.
Okay,
I am as well.
There's just one round of interviews, right? We don't
just one
bring
round.
back finalists, yeah. Yeah, I think that'd probably be all right.
Okay. Does that work for you, Sue? Okay. I think we covered everything we needed to cover regarding that. And then we'll get Sue will get a packet out to everybody of all the resumes and cover letters. I don't, so. Okay. Next is new business. The first is a discussion of a student-led sustainability committee.
Yeah, very excited to share what I learned with you all. I'm going to wait. Chris? Okay. So just in review, the last meeting, we were taking a look at the question, how can we assess and monitor our carbon footprint and possibly reduce it? And I went ahead and interviewed 2 more people from the U.S. Green Business Council and then also someone from the Green Schools Alliance. And the benefits that I talked about last time were that we could use a student-led sustainability advisory committee to help us craft a narrative about sustainability in particular. It would be easy because we already have access to the data through Energy Star, and the tools that I'll talk more about in a minute are compatible with Energy Star. And then the third is to engage students in governance and citizenship. So just as a review, slide please. So when I thought about my process was just, okay, what do we currently have? What can we build with what we currently have? And I'll let you take a look at the bullets, but basically we have students, we have volunteers, we have federally funded resources, specifically ARC, that you'll hear me talk about in just a minute. We've got green professionals outside of our community, architects, engineers, and others who have expertise in green building that are willing to help us. And we have 7 buildings that can act as kind of living laboratories for our students. As I talked with the 2 women who run these programs, really the needs are pretty basic. We need access to utility bills. We need the ability to distribute surveys to building occupants in some cases, not in all, but in some. And it would require a little bit of staff time, and that I think is a significant concern because all of us are very cognizant of how hard everybody's working and know that everyone is stretched thin. So that is different than what I originally thought. It would be 2 to 3 hours at the most, sometime between January and May for Mr. Halpern. So what would it look like? Just at a high level, my initial thought is that we would invite middle school and high school students, so nice that they're with us tonight, to serve on this Sustainability Advisory Committee. We'd ask them to inventory their resources. How much time do they have? How much bandwidth and energy do they have around this? And then assess our carbon footprint and come up with ways that they could contribute to reducing it. And then come back to the board and explain what they did, and we can celebrate them and learn from them as well. So that's kind of the high-level framework. And it takes a few tools. And this is the one that I think is really, really exciting. So ARC is a technology platform. It helps schools collect, manage, and benchmark building-level sustainability. And it looks at 5 categories. So in each of the 5 categories, energy, water, waste, transportation, and human experience, the kids would gather data, and then it would generate a score for one of our buildings or all of our buildings, depending on how we wanted to use it. And it works in tandem with some resources that the USGBC has created. Building Learners is a program that we could apply to and perhaps win a scholarship and be part of a cohort. So the kids would be in a group here, but then they would connect with other cohorts around the country who are doing similar projects. Then we would also have access, if we won the scholarship, to the Learning Lab, which is over 700 lessons that we can use for kids all different age groups. And we would also have access to a green professional mentor. So the Green Schools Project in Illinois would work with the USGBC and connect us with a professional in sustainability who would come and act as a mentor for the kids. And then we would get the score, and that actually, you can put stickers on the buildings so everyone who walks in can see how we're doing with sustainability. I had hoped to share a clip from Miami-Dade Public Schools because you wanted to hear more about what student success was and how much time it takes. Unfortunately, the link, the audio doesn't work on it, so I'm just going to have to describe. I started the video at the air quality because we've just approved that assessment. But the kids, there were 2 kids, a young man and a young woman, and they explained all of the different emissions that they learned about. And what was really delightful to listen to was how they looked at data and then connected it to their behavior. So, we saw that CO2 was high in the parking lot, so we decided that we would reduce the time that we idle in our cars, which is a high school example. But I think one of the benefits of this is, in terms of student governance, is they can really look at data literacy and understand the relationships between the numbers on a page and their own behavior. So that was pretty exciting for me to see. So you had some questions for me, and I found as much information as I could. The first one was, what is this going to cost the district? How much time, how much money does this cost us? So I'll let you just read through all of the bullets, but essentially, if we win the scholarship, it would be free. If we don't win, it would be about $65 in costs. Time is different. The biggest cost would be to Mr. Halpern. Again, I think that's a significant cost, and we should probably think about that carefully, but 2 to 3 hours over 16 weeks. And then it would require adult volunteers in our community. I have 3 already who are interested in doing this. Again, we'd have a mentor, and then the kids would decide the scope of their project. So some of it's TBD. I listened carefully to the people that I interviewed and to a couple different webinars and tried to identify every unintended consequence I could think of. And these are mostly anecdotal. So students typically, if it's a student-run group outside of a classroom, they typically will focus on campaigns. What was exciting to me is the theme for this year is environmental justice. So they would be looking at the connection between equity and the physical buildings that they're in. And then I'll let you just read the others. I've already explained some of them, but I will highlight that it's pretty responsive to the UN's climate report, which says that we are going to experience more frequent extreme heat. More frequently, we'll have extreme precipitation, and we are looking at ecological and agricultural droughts, which are food shortages and deterioration of the tree canopy and of plant life. So it's not a matter of if that's coming, that is what the reports say. And I was spitballing here, it might reduce our administrator retention rate. My anecdotal, again, conversations is that Adam will be front and center with this, and we'll have to work hard to keep him. So I thought that might be an unintended consequence. And last, so why and why not? Why now? So again, the question is not if we're going to spend time on sustainability and climate change. The question really is when and over what time frame. And I included some information from the UN's report. And if you're interested, I sent it to you a few weeks ago, but happy to send it again. The second is that it's just a great investment in our students and in our community to empower learners to contribute to our schools. We can cultivate community by engaging volunteers in work that they find meaningful, improve our buildings' resilience to climate change, reduce emissions, and sequester carbon. And then probably most importantly, it's consistent with our mission, our vision, our values, and our goals. So again, our mission is to empower learners. This certainly does that by asking them to self-organize and use the lessons and engage with a mentor. It creates equity. I would need help with that, so I would be asking the equity committee specifically about access. How do we engage kids in this in a way that makes sure everyone has access? And then cultivating community and using our resources and connecting with more partnerships within and without our community. And then, let's see, it's also consistent with our values. If we look at our values, we read about maximizing student engagement. Collaboration comes up quite often, and so does community, so I think it's consistent with our values. And finally, our goals. The facilities goal says that we're going to expand the master facilities plan and create equitable, quality learning environments for students, staff, and community. So it's aligned with our goals as well. So next steps, let me pause there. Does anyone have, I thought I answered your questions. Stephen, I don't know that if we're connected to CEC, because I know that was your question last time.
It's making sense.
Okay, all right. So is there anything I missed? Anything you want more information about?
I guess I have some, going through the presentation, Christy, and looking at what we've been trying to get accomplished by going through our strategic planning, I worry that we might be, we have the potential to lose focus on what we had come up with as a community for the goals for the district. And that's really probably my biggest concern is, we created all these goals with the strategic planning process with community involvement. And, these were the goals that we had come up with through then. And I'm just afraid that we are inadvertently setting a second or another set of goals through sustainability, and it could take away from what we just established as a committee, or as a board, and as a community. So that's probably where my biggest concern is with that. I don't think there's anybody on the board that's up here going to tell you we're not for sustainability. It's a matter of how we go about doing it. And I would hate to see us take away from what we literally just finished and put together as a package for the community, saying these are what we're going to work on. And I just want to make sure we're not pulling away from that work that we just spent, a long time on, for a multitude of reasons. So that's where I'm coming at with this. That's my biggest concern is what focus and how much focus is going to be put on it, that it's going to take away from what we have already established as our board goals.
Sure. Yeah, I think I hear you. It's got to be aligned with our strategic plan. And I think it is with the facilities goal, which is to expand and clarify the master facilities plan. And so that master facilities plan includes the indoor air quality assessment. And those can be, if we invited kids to do this work, it would be directly aligned with expanding that plan and making sure that the learning environment is a quality learning environment for students, staff, and community. So it expands it. And when you say take away, tell me more about that. How would it take
away our focus from what we're trying to accomplish with the goals that we just established? Pulling the staff off to do something, even if it's for a couple hours in a week, is still taking time away from them to do the stuff that they're trying to concentrate on that we just established. I don't want the district to lose focus on what we just went through 4 or 5 months worth of work.
Right, no, I don't.
To go off onto, it's important, but I don't want to go off into a tangent and lose focus on what we all agreed that this is where we're going. That's my opinion. That's why we're discussing it. It's
Sure.
1 out of 6 right now.
Yep. I'm curious, yeah, thank you. Okay, so we don't want to lose focus.
Anybody else have any comments? Thoughts on where you want to go with this? You want to mull it over for?
It's awesome. And I do see some alignment. I'm just trying to think about how it gets integrated into the work in a way that feels more aligned. And I would really want to defer to Mr. Halperin and the people who set up his priorities. And if you know what I mean, if it's on top of everything else that he has to do, I guess that would be my number one question to Mr. Halperin and Mr. Wildland and Dr. Glickman is is this feasible for Mr. Halperin and or his staff? Right now, so that,
So it would be, there's a couple options there. It would be 2 to 3 hours over 5 months. So, and not in one, because they recommended that the facilities director attend 3 meetings, kind of at the beginning, to kick it off, the middle, and the end. And each of those would be about an hour.
Yeah.
We could not do that and just ask for access to utility bills, and that would be about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So that might make it easier on staff. And then the other piece is, and I think it is a significant, we don't want to buy too far from the strategic plan, what it would mean for us is the students would come once to a meeting and just share their findings.
Yeah.
So just to clarify what that would mean for us.
Got it. And then the other thing that was on my mind was, it feels like, I know you mentioned high school students as well. To me, it feels like something that very much, I guess I can't see it being just middle school students and volunteers without involving more staff time. I feel like there will, you know what I mean, in some way, can that group be self-directed without getting our staff involved? I think that's something to think about, as an unintended consequence. So my thought is there a way to gauge interest of high school students to kind of be that lead, or even, partner with District 137 and take a little off District 46? Those are the things that are on my mind.
And Chrissy, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you, so can I repeat what you said, just to make sure I heard you? So are you saying that you would be interested, I thought you said there's concern about having just middle school students?
Yeah. So
Yeah, no, there's high school interest already.
Okay.
I've got a couple kids who I've reached out to and are interested, not my own either. So it would definitely be probably a small group of a mixed high school and middle school students.
I'm just trying to figure out how does it fit without feeling like another thing, because I think it's really important and valuable work. But if it falls like another thing on top of, do you know what I mean? Other stuff, like how do we integrate it more? And maybe I haven't articulated my question very well and need to do some more thinking about it.
Okay.
But I'd hate for it to land like a burden versus an opportunity, if that makes sense. Because I think that is an opportunity. Just how do we further integrate it and, get energy from, I don't know.
I think that's a great question that probably the kids would be best at answering too, is bringing in kind of a small core group of 2 or 3 kids and saying, how is this going to land with your peers, and how would you like to invite
Because if I think about where it fits in the work of the district, if it's like educator-led, like there's a group of teachers who are like, we really want to do this, and we're going to do it sort of above and beyond, and that's, our passion, that makes sense to me. If it's a group of students that raise their hand and say, like, this is something we want to take on as a project, and in our activism, that makes sense to me. I'm just trying to figure out where the impetus is, because I don't know that it's a board. The board being the impetus doesn't feel like the right place of alignment to me.
So when you say integrate, you're thinking, where does it fit in governance?
Yeah, like where does the energy, where's the ownership of it? I guess for the board to put out a request to say we want advisement on this, maybe that's an in, but I don't know. It's like, where's that impetus and energy going to come from? Because I don't know that it's going to come from the board.
It's a good question,
per se.
because I think sometimes people come to the board meetings or even approach administrators and are under the illusion that that it can be combative. And I think this is a great way to bring kids in to say, here's what we're working on, here's what we want more of, and them to say, here's what we have to offer, and we want to help with that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but anyone else?
No, I'm going to add, because I think the one thing, and I agree with everything that's been said, we don't want to add, additional to the plate of district staff. But your last comment, if we look at this as, and I was processing this today as I was looking at the slideshow and trying to match it up with some of the things that we've talked about and some of the notes that I have. And I think looking at it as an advisory committee rather than a board committee or a superintendent committee removes a little bit of that need to integrate it into the work of what some of those other committees are doing, like the Equity and Inclusion Committee and the Community Engagement Committee, which are long-hour working committees, right? That requires a lot of time of staff, that requires a lot of time of community members, to come to those decisions and make recommendations. And I'm getting to my point, or slowly, but the one thing that we've missed, I think, that we've talked about a lot as a board over the years is trying to get student involvement either as a student member of the board, which many districts around the area have a student member of the board, which I think at some point, if this leads to that, would be a fantastic development. I think there should be some type of student voice sitting on this board. And there's many examples of that in the surrounding area. But I also think that this particular, at least what I like about this particular idea is that it's an advisory committee and can allow us to see if the things that we identified as strategic goals are actually working or are actually having an impact in what we say that they're supposed to have an impact in. And so I was back and forth earlier today. I'm like, do we have enough time? Do we not have enough time? We've talked about it multiple times. I've talked about it. But, as it was presented visually here helped me get a little bit more to a side where even if there are some brief moments of time required to get information, it is an advisory committee then that can report back to us about if those strategic goals that we spent the 4 to 5 months working to develop, if they're actually having an impact out there. Because we can develop strategic plans and strategic goals and then never hear anything from anybody and not know if they're working. This also, I think, is a conduit for perhaps getting a student to serve in some capacity on this board, which is another conversation I would like us to have later on, trying to get somebody on there. I did the high school thing, I'm not sure, we're not aligned as districts. They have their own board and their own set of priorities, we have ours. And I'm wondering, the one thing about the high school thing, that's the one thing that I'm wondering about, how we, this should be, for me, this is a leadership opportunity for District 46. District 127 has multiple leadership opportunities already existing for their students, so I'm wondering how that would be articulated, because I wouldn't want this to become an advisory committee that we are setting up, but that's run through the high school district, and you know what I mean? That's kind of what I'm trying to articulate. So that's where I land with that. I'm supportive of this as an advisory committee because I think that resolves some of the issues of time that some are concerned with. Thank you.
Jason?
I was struggling with how I felt about this. I'm a slow processor anyway. I heard a couple of things that prompted me, and one was impetus, right? And I think my feelings on that are probably born from a general frustration with the problem statement that this is attempting to solve. It clearly needs attention at many different levels, but to me, the problem, it almost needs to be solved top down, it seems to me, although, every action that we all take in our own homes and in our own lives affects this, but it seems to me a problem that's going to need to be solved top down. That's just an observation or a thought. Stephen said something about advisory board, and when you first said that, my mind went to kind of advising the work that's being done kind of on the long-range plans from the facilities planning point of view, and that's kind of where I thought you were going with that idea. So as an advisory committee, that sounds like probably the right place for this to land. That's the state of my unfully formed thoughts on this at the moment.
Tamika?
And to conserve carbon, I don't have anything new that my colleagues haven't already brought forward in terms of, I love the idea. Thank you for the robust presentation that you brought forward. And I am leaning more towards an advisory committee to the point of making sure that everything is done is being tied back to the strategic planning work that's been done, so that we're telling the whole story. And to Dr. Mack's perspective, we're also getting that closed loop feedback of how are we delivering against those strategic goals that we've set forth.
Thank you. I'm just writing it down.
Can I pose a question that might, I don't have an answer to, but maybe would help, to Jason's point, to think through this? Like if we had a group of 5 students that came to a board meeting from District 46 and said, we're passionate about this, climate change, we want to do something, we want to take action, we want to, do a project or, in whatever, like, what would our reaction be? We probably would not be like, no, flat out no. We might ask them, like, where does it fit, and ask them to, to show that alignment to us. And then if they said, here's some work we would like to do and bring back to you, would we turn that down? And so, interesting way, a different way to look at it, to the point of if there are students who are interested in doing this work, would we not want to offer them, would we say no to it? So maybe it's just a matter of, are there other conversations we need to have to determine, like, what is the impetus for this? Do we have students who have sort of enough compassion and commitment to take this and run with it and not have it be an advisory committee versus a project that the board takes on or project that district staff takes on?
I think we'd also have to get, sorry, Stephen. I think we'd also have to get to the point where we had clearly defined goals for what they're going to be involved in and what was the end game, right? Clearly defined on roles and responsibilities, expectations, and parameters for which they need to work in, right? If we're going to go down this route, we can't have, a lack of a better term, going rogue and all of a sudden coming back with something that we weren't even expecting as far as plans for the district and so on and so forth. So if we decide to go down this route, I would need to see some clearly defined roles and responsibilities and goals for the people that are involved, and what the biggest thing is, what the goal and the impact is going to be for the committee, for the advisory committee.
So said differently, like, what does success look like, not only for the student, but for the board and those supporting the work of the students?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you very well.
So said differently, or in Tamika speak, what does success look like from this initiative?
And from the different stakeholder
From the different
perspectives?
stakeholder perspectives, yes.
Okay, so board, student.
This also might be appropriate too for, I know, again, for me, there's a pretty clear distinction between a board committee and a superintendent committee and an advisory committee. But I think maybe this might be a good opportunity to also suggest for lack of a better term, like a formal proposal of what it would look like. Like, what would the structure look like versus what was up on the slides. But similar to what we did with the Community Engagement Committee, those first several meetings before that thing got running, before the virus hit and then they got running, but, those first meetings prior to COVID, we, each time we presented to the board, it was a series of, okay, and we faced the same questions from everybody. How does this fit? How does the Community Engagement Committee fit? The exact same question. How does this fit into what we're doing and what does it require? And so, until the pandemic hit, we were starting to prepare what it might look like in a schedule. And I think that would help all of us visualize what that would look like as an advisory committee.
Okay.
I mean, kind of consolidate those ideas that we saw tonight into, and if there are high school students that are interested in this already, that would be work that they likely would be able to do. And, in a separate conversation that we might have, this might live very well too in some of the hallways of the Community Engagement Committee, because that might be just a natural place for that to take shape. I don't know what that means necessarily in my head, but that's, I say that and then I don't know where that is going to all end up, but then it just seems like that might be a logical spot for it to come from.
So are you thinking it would advise the Community Engagement Committee?
Well, no, that we would be able to help advise them on how
Gotcha.
to be an
Okay.
advisory committee.
Yeah,
And
I
not
think-
take away staff time and not add extra, necessarily extra burden to the district, but also be a place for them so we would field most of that stuff,
Sure.
those questions and stuff.
Yeah, I think
That would take the stress off of staff time and house it in an existing committee that's already put together for this type, because it is a community outreach thing. It's a community engagement advisory committee, essentially, right? At least I see it that way.
Yeah, my brain's pinging.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we would want some sort of clear goals for the advisory committee, that the kids would need to identify clear goals, that they would need to, we would need to approve those goals, and they would need to be tied and closely aligned with our strategic plan so that we're not going off into the ether. Have some questions about whether to include high school kids or not. And we need to know what student interest is. Is that correct? Did I miss anything? No? Okay, so the cohort application is due on the 31st, and I'm guessing that application will require us to have some focus. Are you comfortable with pursuing the scholarship, or do you want to pay for the,
What was, you said it was $65?
it's 65.
I don't know if you're gonna, be able to get it up and running by then, to be able to get the application in with all the stuff that we've just kind of asked. So, I mean, it's $65, so.
Okay, if I can get it together, can I send it out by email, and then you can take a look? If I can't, then we can go into November? Or no?
Well, we would have to approve it at the next board meeting. The advisory committee, that'll be the hard part, right? To get all that accomplished between now and the next board meeting for us to feel comfortable enough to
Yeah, it might,
create the advisory committee. So there's, we're just in a time crunch there. You know, I don't think Chris is going to say $65 is going to break the bank.
okay. Let me see, yeah, I'll check into the application too, to see if we have to accept if we are included, because the cohort, and then I can just shoot you that information. If we don't have time to put it together, then I might be able to pull it together, so.
Okay.
Because the benefit of the cohort is that is the networking for the kids across the country too, so.
No, I get it. And it may, just to put a realistic expectation, if, I assume this cohort, they have cohorts during the rest of the year or annually or whatever, right? You can get into a different cohort if not this one, that.
Yeah, not this, it wouldn't be this year, we'd have to go next year.
Right,
So
so
yeah,
it
but
may
there's
be,
other,
it may take the time frame from the process that it took us to bring up the community engagement committee. It may take it till, you're just going to have to get into the next one
sure,
at the end of next year, or in October of next year, versus getting into this one. Just so that we can get everything straight before we try and dive into this process.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I will take a look at this. So then what do you want next from me? Do you want me to update you again next meeting, or?
I wonder if before the board answers that, if I could share a few thoughts that as I've been listening. Can I interrupt this process for a moment to do that? Okay. So I want to be very clear that anything that our school board asks our staff to do, our staff will do. So, you know, I'm very clearly not asking Mr. Halpern, will he make time for this? Because he will make time for this if that's the request of the board, for sure. As will any staff member. As I've been listening, I'm thinking in terms of kind of operational, right? If this goes forward, what do we have to do? And I will admit that it's unclear to me at the moment who would be in charge of it. I'm not sure I understand that yet, but I've been thinking about, okay, so who else besides Mr. Halpern would be giving time? And again, this is not a barrier to moving forward, but I just want to mention that I do believe there would be other people. So one of the things I'm thinking about is, okay, what else do we do in our district that's really very volunteer heavy, so to speak? So we have the Science Olympiad program that's been in place for a long time. That's we're very grateful to have lots of volunteers that are part of that process. So this sounds a little bit like that in that way. So if something is connected to the school district there are things that we have to do. So for example, Mr. Woke would have to be involved in the process of vetting those volunteers, going through background checks and such. That's not a barrier to this, but it's something that he would have to do. Probably we would, I'm not sure how we would get the students involved necessarily, but I'm guessing we would be putting out materials. I'm not sure if it would be a survey or just some kind of a flyer. We would likely be, so we'd have staff that would be translating that into Spanish. Again, not a barrier, but something that would take somebody else's time. And I'm thinking, as I go back to thinking about the Science Olympiad, although it's very volunteer heavy, absolutely we have staff members who, get that up and running every year, host meetings, advertise it for students, work with parents. The principals do that. So I would envision that our principals would end up getting involved. So I just wanted to mention all of that to you. Also, as I'm listening to the idea of the high schoolers and the middle schoolers together, which I think is really interesting and kind of exciting, and is something that I, as a parent, would have probably allowed, in fact did, allow my middle schoolers to do things with high schoolers. I think that that's not always the case. I think we would have some families who would not want their children to be involved in a program that also involved high schoolers. I'm also not clear yet where this program would be, where the activities would be, if it would be meeting on school grounds or elsewhere. So those are just some questions that are in my head.
Thank you. And just to be clear, I was just coming, I wasn't going to skip over, so thank you for making those clear. I do want to address some of your concerns, because I had those too. It would not, so in terms of volunteers, the volunteers that are in place are already volunteers. So I don't know if it would add to Mr. Walk at all, because we've already been cleared. And in terms of flyers, that would all be the kids' responsibility. So we can give them a budget to say, you have 15 minutes with Mr. Halpern, and that's it. Everything else you have to do on your own, and that's part of the self-governance. And I think that's consistent with what's appropriate for adolescents too. Maybe not so much with the littles, but definitely for middle and high school kids, and they can help each other. So, and as I'm talking with other schools, and just to clarify, they really are saying it's not staff time, because you can run this as an after-school club, and we wouldn't even be running it as a club. It would be an advisory committee to the board, so that frees up and it separates what we would be doing from staff. So just as a point of clarification, it would not require more than that information and more than that amount of time, and any kind of distribution, and could be done by the kids through social media. So, and they certainly, we could work with equity and inclusion to get a volunteer to translate, which we've done before too. So it truly would not be, from what I've heard from the woman who directs 12 schools through the Green Schools Project, it truly is not extra staff time, other than what I identified. So just as a point of clarity. But I think it does absolutely need to be aligned with this strategic plan, and we can think more about that and bring that back too.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions, comments? Okay. If you think of any other things you want clarity on, be sure to send Christy an email. It'd be appreciated. Okay. Next is the 2021 Resolution Committee Report.
All right, thank you, everyone. As you guys know, this year's Delegate Assembly will vote on items in the 2021 Resolution Committee Report on Saturday, November 20th. I did send out this light deck in advance. However, there's been a couple tweaks to it, so just know that Mr. Vipon is sharing the most updated version. Our actions this evening is going to ensure that CCSD 46 is positioned to leverage our voice, our collective voice in this voting process that's coming up, okay? And so how are we going to do that? Tonight, we'll be looking at the 16 resolutions that have been brought forward by the IASB Delegate Committee, along with 4 affirmations or reaffirmations and 2 items that fall under belief statements. So just a point of clarity before we dive in to the actual report, the distinction between the reaffirmations or position statements and belief statements. Position statements address issues affecting or concerning local boards of education, and they direct the association's advocacy efforts, whereas belief statements express significant values commonly held by local boards of education. So in one case, position statements are looking at addressing issues, where belief statements are focused on the values held by our local board, okay? Next, we'll get into the discussion, but before we do that, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things in terms of order of events. So the IASB Delegate Committee actually outlines the priority of the resolutions as called through items 1 through 7 on the next slide. And so first we'll tackle educational programs, then we'll get into financing public education, legislative activity, board operations and duties, board employee relations, local, state, federal relations, and district organization and elections. As your 2021 delegate, I'll be collecting the responses from our individual board members and then collating that content that's going to ultimately inform our collective vote on November 20th. If any of my colleagues want to learn more about the delegate assembly and the process, there are 2 upcoming webinar offerings through IASB, one being on November 3rd and the other on November 10th. Should I go off the rails, we have our immediate past delegate, Mr. LaCroix, here to keep me on track. Okay. The full report was sent out via email in late September, so all of the board colleagues should have the report. If not, I can have Mr. Vipon just pull up the website. Do we have a need for that?
I got the report in front of me.
We're good? Okay. So without further ado, we can just jump right into the first resolution. If I can organize my papers. All right, so the first, I lied to you. I told you the order, the priority of the resolutions, and then I didn't organize mine in that way. So if you guys will offer me grace and allow me to read them in the order that I have in front of me. Thank you. All right, so the first one is with regard to board employee relations under new resolutions on page 9. And this is regarding pre-service teacher education and licensure in literacy. So what this particular resolution is looking to do is to require pre-service teachers seeking licensure in the areas listed to complete at least one undergraduate level literacy education course that's solely focused on reading education. All right. And the district's rationale for this is recognizing that only 34% of Illinois fourth graders and 35% of Illinois eighth graders are showing proficient or above in literacy. Right. There's a lot of information citing studies that support the need for this, and the Resolutions Committee is recommending that this resolution be adopted. Are there any questions about this resolution?
Can I ask a point of clarity? Are we giving our up or down tonight? Or is this just discussion for now and then?
So keep me honest. I think this is to start to capture feedback, so do the up or down, recognizing that the report went out in advance. But if the body feels like we need more time, and we just want to use tonight for discussion purposes, I can capture those as well, and then we can do up or down at our next board meeting.
I mean, there's several that I'm clear on and several that I am not, maybe, is, you know what I mean? And this is one where I would want to maybe hear from the folks in our district who actually do this work and ask, is this a solution to the problem?
Okay.
That would be my
So-
question on this one. Does it, yeah, this problem clearly exists. Is the licensure a solution to that problem?
Okay. Thank you for that. Mr. Weedman?
I had a concern with it. I had a concern with it is how will it affect, we already have a teacher shortage. This is adding to that responsibility of a new teacher or current existing teacher. Are we going to end up losing the ability to have these as teachers as we go along? You know, I just worry that we would be exasperating the problem moving forward.
So
I
just-
don't doubt that it's a problem. I'm just saying we could be making it worse.
So just a point of order, do we just want to allow this forum tonight to just review the resolutions and have discussion, and then we come back next month for our vote? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think we can probably even come back next board meeting and have the vote, if that's all right with you.
And there might be some where we're like, we already all know what we want, and we don't need to discuss it tonight, you know, and we can move on. But this one particularly, I was very interested in, you know, our district who actually have to hire these folks, what their thoughts are.
So, well, how about the ones that we are in consensus of, we just mark off tonight, and then we come
Okay.
back next month, or next board meeting and take off the rest. How's
Okay.
that work?
That sounds like an efficient plan. Okay.
Before we move on, I would like to ask a question. It's kind of a meta question. It's not really on the merits of the thing, but, so the requirements that ISB puts forth, they promulgate on the requirements for licensure, are those mandated by law? Is that how that works?
Can you ask that question again? I couldn't say it again.
Yeah, so ISB promulgates requirements for licensure.
Correct?
Is that law-driven? Is that codified in law?
Oh,
Is that how
I
that
think
typically
so.
works? Okay,
I mean, it's school code,
yeah, okay.
right?
That's just a
Yeah.
kind of a meta question I had on reading that.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think Dr. Mack got rescued by the governor at some point from having a
Barely.
student teach.
Barely. I don't have to student teach, but I do have to go back and get my licensure. So that program begins in October, if anybody wants to know.
All right, so it sounds like we will table the vote on pre-service teacher education and licensure and literacy until we have an opportunity to poll our district staff to understand if they truly believe this is root cause, and then also the impact, understanding the impact of doing this, recognizing teacher shortages. Okay. All right. The next one is item number 2 on page 9, around student safety and protection plan. Right now, this legislation or this recommendation would be looking for some optionality in the student safety and protection plan. So essentially allowing volunteer employees to carry concealed firearms, and they would be required to possess a FOI card, a concealed carry license. They would be required to complete some additional trainings and certifications that would be set forth by the school board. This particular resolution has come up before, as many of us know. And really the concern is around having local control over student safety procedures within any one district. And so the resolution committee is recommending a no vote to this, or do not adopt, as we have done in the past. Is there any discussion from the floor on student safety and protection plan?
Tamika, I'm noticing that the version I'm looking at, the resolutions committee seems to be recommending adoption.
That's what I'm seeing too. It said that the do not adopt failed, so then they went with do adopt.
Oh, I'm so sorry, do adopt. They do say do adopt. So I'm sorry. So they had originally had this do not adopt, and then they had additional discussion. And essentially what it was, so you're absolutely right, so thank you for that. It was basically saying, hey, let this be local to the district to determine the needs within their respective community. And so as opposed to making like a unilateral mandate, no, let the districts make the best informed choice for their community. So my apologies, I stand corrected. The committee recommended a do adopt on this. Thank you, Mr. LaCroix.
Yeah, as you note, this was brought up in previous years, and it was a very contentious issue, as evidenced by the number of speakers prior to the resolution being introduced. Generally speaking, favor local control. I mean, as a principal, also strongly believe that more guns in any place is not a good solution, while being sensitive to the particular realities that exist in some of these rural districts. So I'm generally recommending that we do not vote for adoption of this one.
Same, and I say that because I don't ever want to see this in District 46, and this board will not last forever.
I'm in agreement with both my colleagues. I do not support adoption of this.
I'm going to be one that goes the other way. Sorry. I don't like guns any more than the next guy. That's probably sitting at this table. But when you start looking at some of these rural districts that have 2 or 3 squad cars in a couple 100-square-mile area that they have to protect, you're looking at a very long distance travel time for kids' safety in order to get an officer on site. I agree up here in the northern suburbs, the northeast corner of the district of Illinois, we can get, there's 4 cops at any one day on duty in Grayslake, plus all the people that are in the office that are all carrying. You're going to get a big swarm of cops up here. Down in the southern ends or the very rural areas of Illinois, they don't have that luxury. So are we by taking away local control from another school district, my concern is that we're also putting kids' safety in jeopardy by having all the requirements that they have on site or in the resolution. You're looking at somebody who's trained for that, to be able to protect those kids and have protection on site. So I would rather us adopt, but I'm one vote.
Thank you. Mrs. Miller?
I don't want guns in schools, so I would not support that.
And my vote, I struggle with the same point that Mr. Weedman made in terms of, and I think that the rationale is called out here in terms of just the locality for the police response time and able to get there. But I too feel like, there's other remedies that the student resource officers can leverage aside from having a gun to intervene and control crowds or difficult situations with children. So I'm a no. Okay. So the consensus would be from our board, a no vote for this item. Okay. Next, under board operations and duties is school board member compensation. I believe this too has come up in the past, and essentially the case being made to compensate board members is that there are otherwise people in the community that will want to serve on the board, but for needing to leave work early or incurring some additional expenses, and so it becomes an inequitable process to serve on the school board, depending on your financial situation. And so it calls out a lot of different demographics that are impacted here, but the goal of this resolution is to remove barriers to the community to serve on the board. And so the resolution committee recommends do not adopt, in citing School Code 105, ILCS 5/10-10, that are requiring school board members to serve without compensation. So,
I concur.
Same.
Mrs. Miller?
I just want to clarify, if the resolution is adopted, that doesn't mean we have to, like, I don't think we're asking to be paid, but it would give schools that have a harder time finding school board members because of those barriers the option to pay. Is that correct?
I think it would put it into law that you get a stipend per meeting, is what it would end up being.
Can you say that again?
So our district, if we were as a district to vote yes as an example, so this puts it out there, like if then all the other, 850 some odd districts, right, voted yes, then it would pass. That doesn't mean we have to adopt it.
Right.
No, that means we would have to adopt it, and the money would have to be then allocated for the meetings. Usually for many board meetings, like for existence for our, for the fire district board, they are compensated for per meeting that they go to. I don't remember the dollar amount that it is, but per meeting that they are compensated, and that is in the law that they have to be compensated. So this would be changing the law that says they're going to be compensated something.
So a point, Mr. Weedman, thank you for that. Point of clarity for me then. So like in the prior resolution that we reviewed, if our district were to vote yes, because we wanted, not so much for ourselves, but we wanted the other rural areas or more urban areas to have that ability, and other districts felt the same way, if that then was yes, if those yes votes carried, then would that then come back to us and say we have to have?
For that resolution, it would make it so that it's under local control. This isn't saying local control.
Okay,
So for the Safe Kids one, that would be, the district has the option, and it said it clearly in there that the district had the option. This one is not a local, it would be codifying, saying you would
okay.
have to then
Gotcha, that makes
compensate
sense.
them.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Mrs. Miller?
Yeah, I think so. If I'm understanding correctly, it would come back and we would set the rate then, so we could set it for $1 if we wanted to, or, right? So I would like to give them the choice to do that.
Okay. Mr. LaCroix?
I'm a do not adopt on this one.
All right. And I am also a do not adopt on this one. So as a board, we would be voting nay. Okay. Next is board member child care reimbursement. So again, along similar lines of the compensation, this is saying, this is trying to remove the barrier of any folks looking to serve on the board to have childcare. Otherwise, that will preclude them from serving on the board because they don't have a way to attend and engage in thinking that By providing child care reimbursement, it will increase access and participation. Part of the rationale here was that there are members of the community that would otherwise support, but due to the reality of childcare, it disenfranchises certain members of the community. All right. The Resolutions Committee did recommend a do adopt on this particular resolution. All right, discussion?
Yeah,
Mr.
I would
Lord.
distinguish this resolution from the prior one. I think there's a broader wind that's blowing towards the inclusion that can be gained from, providing reimbursement for childcare. I'm a do adopt on this one. I don't think it has the optics problem of the other as well. I think it's just, someone needs childcare to attend these meetings and they can gain access to this service, this board service by having that. I think that's a good thing, and I don't think it has any of the optical problems of the other.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Mack is a yes?
I'm a yes as well.
Okay.
My biggest concern is where the dollar amount's going to come from.
I'm sorry?
My big concern with it was where the dollar amounts are going to come from. Are they going to come from the state level to reimburse them, or are they going to come out of the district pocket? And for a district that's 64% adequacy as it is, it becomes an issue. So I'm actually a do not.
Okay.
I think we know the answer to that question though, right? It's going to come from our budget, yeah.
Then therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
It's another one of those unfunded mandates that we have to bear the burden for. That's my concern.
And women benefit.
I understand that. I'm not arguing with that part. I'm just,
Ms. Miller?
Again, if it came back to our district, we would be able to set the rate, right? We would say how much money for childcare, not that was, it would be an hour.
Unless I'm not reading this correctly, this does appear to be within local board control, but keep me honest, Mr. Weedman.
Okay.
I don't have the answer to that. That's the honest question.
Yeah, it's not really clear in my reading of it.
I'm in favor of it, and with the understanding that we would set I understand it's not clear, but it seems to me it's going towards local controls, so I would be in support of that.
And remember, this is potential legislation, not actual, so that would all have to be hammered out if legislation would come up to the, that would definitely have to be a point of decision for the actual legislation.
That's a good point for all this stuff, is we're just voting on what we want them to advocate on our behalf for. All of this stuff is, even the most popular stuff is a long way away from being legislation.
Good points, thank you. And I too am a yes for this one. So our board would be voting in favor of board member child care reimbursement. Okay. All right, the next one, item 5, remote virtual school board open meetings. Right, so this is allowing to remove restrictions around remote meetings, so outside of it being like an emergency mandate, having the ability to allow for open or closed meetings to be conducted via audio or video conference. All right, and it goes on to say without the physical presence of a quorum of the members. And so we would just have to ensure provisions to validate that the board member that is attending virtually is vetted or validated, confirmed, right? And this is recognizing that with the COVID pandemic, that boards were able to effectively conduct the public's business with increasing transparency throughout this time. And so the advocacy is for allowing boards to be able to do this even when there's not a public health emergency. The resolution committee recommends a do adopt to this resolution. So we need discussion.
I vote to adopt. I think recognizes the new world that we live in, and I like it, and I think it's more inclusive. And more accessible for board members who might have disabilities that preclude them from physically getting to a meeting.
Okay, Mr. Mack is a yes. Yes, Mr. LaCroy. Okay, yes for Mr. Wheatman, yes for Mrs. Miller, and I too am a yes. Okay. All right, next, page 12, number 6, district organizations and elections, looking to reorganize the board from 28 to 40 days. So currently, when there is a newly elected board, the guidance is that it is to be installed within 28 days. And oftentimes, boards are citing that they have to call special reorganization meetings because of how the calendar cycle time falls, to maintain or be seated within that 28 days. And so the concern is that this is putting a burden on elected volunteers. And so as a result, looking for an additional 12 days to allow for the seating of the new board. The resolution committee recommends to adopt the change from 28 days to 40. Any discussion needed here? All right.
Sounds good.
Consensus? Yep, we all concur. Okay, so we will be voting yes. All right, next is page 12, number 7, which should have been the first thing in terms of prioritization. My apologies again, is the Indigenous people curriculum inclusion. And so the district's proposal here is that Native American history, culture, and current events can help give a more comprehensive view of American history, connect us to one another, inspire empathy, and see the whole picture rather than viewing society through a limited point of view. One of the causes or one of the points made for this is that other ethnic groups are included in the history curriculum. And so the Indigenous people was an area that was missing in U.S. history requirements. All right. So the Resolutions Committee recommends that we do adopt this.
Anybody disagree?
Okay, so we have a unanimous yay. All right. The next is Science of Reading Curriculum, number 8, page 13. All right. The district here was looking for teachers to possess a science of reading or urging the science of reading in their K through 5 curriculum because it provided more in-depth phonemic education to help students that aren't necessarily literacy proficient. There's a lot of content in here around research that connects the science of literacy and why the district feels like this is important in terms of developing phonics a little bit more for students. The Resolutions Committee did consider this heavily, but they felt as though the proposed resolution was being more restrictive than what's already there and would lack some flexibility in the resolution language. So as a result, the Resolution Committee recommended to do not adopt. All right, discussion around science of reading curriculum. Do we need more time to gather insight from our, okay.
I would be interested in hearing from our curriculum experts. I mean, I don't feel like I have,
I think we can do that right now.
So I can give you just a little bit of context, and I'm just going to go quickly in it. You know that one of our board initiatives is for us to investigate a new literacy program. And so we have, my colleague and I have begun researching them, and this is a true statement that many of the new literacy programs have phonics instruction as an add-on and not part of their core curriculum. Surprised me because I feel strongly that phonics is a basis of the beginning of reading, and so I do believe in the concept of that we should be including. That is actually the reason why we came with a proposal earlier or later last school year to have a new program called From Phonics to Reading, which is based on phonemic awareness and phonics instruction that I felt like we were missing, and that is going to be part of our discussion. So I'm struggling here a little bit because I'm reading that it says the wording in the legislation or the proposal is restrictive. I think it's just part of what reading instruction should be, that phonics, phonemic awareness, all of those things should be part of a reading program. I'm not seeing anything that I think is too restrictive. And the science of reading is kind of the new buzzword in literacy in literacy instruction right now. And as everything in curriculum, things move on a pendulum. And we had moved away from phonics instruction, and now we're wholeheartedly back in the need for phonics instruction. And I will say that that was one of the hardest things to teach during pandemic. It's also one of the hardest things to teach with the mask that we're all wearing at the moment, because part of that is having students actually see the letter formation and what your mouth and tongue are doing to create all of those things. So it is a need for us here in District 46 for the new program. Feedback has been great, that we're loving the new materials, but I'm not sure how many more details I can share. I am not against the whole concept, but again, this is just a strategy, a recommendation to go to say, yes, don't forget about phonics instruction. If we didn't, I wouldn't be doing my job in bringing a proposal to you that's going to have something to do with the science of reading.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lewis, for that context.
I just wanted to add in, thank you, that Paul did such a nice job explaining why we know phonemic awareness is important. What I'm seeing here is that the concern is that perhaps curriculum would be required to be updated in school districts, and yet teacher preparation would not be updated. And I think that's what the resolution committee was trying to avoid. And anytime we're looking at any legislation that mandates specific curriculum, I think it's a time to take a pause and wonder about that, even if we as a school district believe in that particular practice or that particular curriculum.
I was going to say something along those lines, Paul. You mentioned the pendulum swinging towards phonics now. A resolution or legislation that was passed that mandated it, if the current best thinking on the subject went away from it, then this would be restrictive in that way. I was wondering if we're going to go a whole board meeting without hearing your voice, so I'm grateful that you had a chance to speak up.
All right, any other points of discussion before we go to a vote? Okay. Mr. LaCroix, since we're locking eyes.
I recommend do not adopt.
Thank you. Do not.
Yeah, I recommend do not, only because we still have the local ability to put in what he wants to, or for the, if it was, you can't do it at all, then it'd be a different story, but since we have local control, I'd say do not.
Okay. Mrs. Miller? Do not? Okay. So then we are a do not, a nay for the reading curriculum. All right. Moving on to item 9, page 13, the health and sex education curriculum. The genesis here is for advocacy for local school district control over the content and curriculum for health and sex education courses offered in their district. So there are optionality concerns indicating that, as it stands, Senate Bill 0818 currently states a school district may, rather than shall, use the new curriculum. And so the rationale here is that the local board best understands what's appropriate for their community and demographic and what their constituents would want to have as part of health and sex education curriculum. The resolutions committee recommends do adopt to allow this resolution to proceed forward. Do we need to have discussion about the health and sex ed curriculum?
Yeah, I think I need to understand something a little first. So the resolution is that support and advocate for local schools to control of content and curriculum. Are there any guardrails around that? Like, I think it needs to be, and I'm quoting from this,
So as I
the
understand
intent of
it-
the recently passed legislation, age and developmentally appropriate, medically accurate, trauma-informed, all of those things, are those guardrails still in place if this is adopted and legislation is passed based on our advocacy of this?
Yeah, as I understand, this has recently passed, and what the concern is that it says may, and the argument is that it should say shall.
Yeah, so remember that these are each written by us and submitted by a school district. So in this case, Mercer County School District 404 is saying, we already like our curriculum. It's medically sound, and our community's behind it, and we're not interested in changing it to anything different. And so they're asking to continue to have that local control so that it doesn't need to be changed.
Right.
I'm not sure I understood what just happened there.
What I just said?
So the
Could you
current-
repeat what you said?
The current law, Senate Bill 808, was passed and said that they shall follow these rules, right? They want the bill to say may follow, which gives them that
Give them some
leeway to,
optionality.
gives them the option of being local control.
But the law that was written says may use. The concern is that the legislator
I'm sorry.
will go and say, no, we're going to replace may with shall.
Yeah, they're just asking to not have any specific new requirements in sex ed. And their concern is, okay, this was written as a may, but we want to put a stop to this now because it might turn into shall, and then we have a different kind of problem.
But what follows may or shall? Is it the culturally appropriate, developmentally appropriate, trauma-informed? I mean, what follows shall or may?
Yeah, as it reads, be it resolved that the Illinois Association of School Boards shall support and advocate for local school district control of content and curriculum for health and sex education courses offered in their district.
I didn't mean in the resolution language, I meant in the
You're asking about
legislation.
SB 0818?
Yes.
You're asking for more information about that?
Gotcha.
Okay, so I think
Okay.
maybe what would be helpful is we pause on this one,
Yep.
and when we come back to it next time, we'll provide you with more information about what's in there.
Okay.
And then we can talk about may and shall as much as you want. Okay, it's a plan.
All right. All right, the next item, page 13, number 10, financing public education, other, cannabis sales. So the resolution is indicating that legislation would allocate 20% of state taxpayer revenues from cannabis sales to public education programs that support youth development violence prevention and health education. These funds would be divided equitably across the state based on a disproportionately impact area map. The district rationale is that Illinois, that one, we're already getting general revenue. Schools are already getting revenue from cannabis sales through the general revenue fund. In that this is about $175 million in taxable revenue that, schools certainly could benefit from. And it would also help to support programs in school that include funding racial justice and anti-racism education efforts. This would be considered new money, so not replacing any current funding. Concerns raised was that this could potentially send the wrong message to students as it pertains to anti-drug campaigns. And then again, countered with the fact that, well, the money could be used for educational awareness around anti-drug campaigns. I tried to do some quick math, but quite honestly, without seeing that DIA map, it would be hard to understand what is considered equitable. I mean, just doing it just straight, $175 million, I mean, divided by the number of districts, I mean, it could be a sizable amount of money and could go into reinvesting into anti-drug campaigns if the district so chose. So the Resolutions Committee recommends to adopt, do adopt on this particular resolution. Any discussion?
Just two things. So the 175 million is what their state has brought in tax revenue, and
Yes.
they would take 20% of that.
Yeah, so that'll be
So
35
it's about
million
35
divided
million,
by 859 districts, so we're roughly 40K if it was truly even, but I think that DIA map may have some nuances.
Yeah,
That
and
was
then just interesting enough, about 3 years ago, I sat down with Sam Yingling and discussed basically this, is taking half of, I said half, because I was greedy, of the new cannabis revenue and pushing it towards the school as new money. So this is a start, I guess. I'd rather see it higher, but I'm all for it.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, any other than any nays, I guess is probably the shorter. Okay, so then it would pass as a yay for our district. All right. Moving along, page 14, item number 11, clean energy infrastructure federal funding. This is looking for IASB to urge Congress of the United States to provide federal funding to school districts for clean energy infrastructure, including but not limited to solar panels, geothermal heating and cooling, and wind turbines. So the rationale, there is a lot of science, as we know from our own colleague, Mrs. Miller, about the benefits of clean air and the significant savings that can be achieved through solar panels and such. However, school districts oftentimes just don't have the funding to be able to support these type of large capital costs and investments, but certainly the impact on student achievement is noted by having cleaner energy and air. The Resolutions Committee is currently at a do not adopt position, recognizing that there's already federal funding within the current system and that they believe that it's working overall. Do we need discussion? All right, Mrs. Miller, I see your finger on the button. Ready to vote?
Sorry, I would support it.
Okay. Mr. Weedman?
I guess I would go against their recommendation. I don't see a harm in trying to get more federal funding towards clean energy, but
Okay. Mr. Mack?
I would agree, I would actually support this one,
Okay.
based on what we've all been talking about.
100%.
Okay. Mr. LaCroy?
I don't see how the current system is necessarily working that great. I would support this.
I would agree. That's a unanimous yes from our board. Okay. All right, next, item 12, page 14, electric school buses, charging stations, federal funding. So this resolution would urge Congress to provide federal funding to school districts for clean electric school buses and charging stations. The rationale is around the amount of diesel fuel, the push to going electric, and the health risk associated with continuing to use diesel fuel buses, not only in health, but physical health, but mental health as well. The Resolutions Committee had concerns in terms of this resolution being exclusive to electric buses only and didn't consider other types of cleaner burning fuels such as compressed natural gas, and also questioned the practicality of it for rural areas that may not have access to charging stations. And so as a result, the Resolutions Committee recommends do not adopt. Discussion?
I mean, those reasons not to adopt might be true at this very moment, but with the trajectory of electric vehicles in general, I mean, I don't see any reason not to recommend this.
Yeah, it's not a mandate to go electric. It's if you have the capacity and it will work for your district, there's funding available, and I think that's a good thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Wheatman?
I'm for adopting this one too.
Okay. And I don't think I even needed to ask you, Mrs. Miller. All right. Our board is in support of this resolution. Page 14, number 13, landscaping federal funding. This is to provide federal funding to school districts for landscaping and infrastructure improvements to mitigate the effects of environmental problems. There was some concerns with this particular district in Champaign, where they had sustained some flooding. And so having had improved landscaping, they would have prevented the flooding issues. And so the committee suggested an amendment, and the accepted amended language now reads, be it resolved that the Illinois Association of School Boards shall urge the Congress of the United States to provide federal funding to school districts for landscaping and infrastructure improvements to mitigate the effects of environmental problems. As such, the Resolutions Committee is recommending do adopt. Discussion? Ready for a vote? All right, looks like we have yays all around. So we are voting in support. Okay. Moving right along, page 15, number 14, under legislative activities, expand broadband internet access. This is seeking to advocate legislation to expand broadband internet access for families across the state of Illinois. COVID-19 highlighted disparities in internet access. So even for districts that were able to provide the one-to-one hardware, the computers for students, many of the students were unable to connect with their school-issued device. And then, more importantly, when students were able to get on, there's concerns around, I guess, connectivity speed. So this is looking at high-speed access to ensure all students have the ability to learn in remote situations. The Resolutions Committee, as a result, is recommending a do adopt position on this resolution. Any discussion? All right. We are all in favor and voting in support. Okay. Next, page 15, item 15, child safe gun storage. Okay, so this is regarding, this would advocate, for legislation to strengthen child safe gun storage laws in the state of Illinois, requiring gun owners to store firearms, whether they are loaded or unloaded, in a secure locked container if a person under the age of 18 is likely to gain access to the weapon without permission. So Illinois already has, already prohibits any person from storing or leaving his or her firearm unlocked, accessible to a minor under the age of 14. This resolution is looking to raise the age requirement to 18 to cover K through 12 school population, and recognizing that high school students, they provided statistics around gun violence in high schools and such, and the trends there as part of the rationale. The Resolutions Committee was recommending do not adopt, indicating that there's potential for overreach here, that the resolution went too far, and that it was not the place of the local school board or ISB to determine the actions people take in their own homes. Discussion? Is there any yays for this? Okay,
I think I might be.
okay.
At first, I didn't think there was really the nexus here, the rationale that the committees put forth, but I'm kind of moved by the idea of the school shooters gaining access to the guns at home, and I think I could support this, but.
Two, I'm a yay. Mrs. Braden?
I feel like overreach at this point is kind of secondary to, if no one else is going to say it, then school board should. So I'm a yay.
Okay, so that is a yay. Mr. Mack?
These are always hard, but I'm going to support the do not adopt. I don't think governance is, I don't think this fits into the governance role of the school board. The other one did, that we talked about.
Okay.
This one, I don't think so.
Mr. Whitman?
Yeah, I don't think we should be dictating what people do in their houses. Sorry, but before you go to the next one, to finish this vote, before you go to the next one.
I'm sorry?
Pause a second before you go to the next one after you get the rest of the vote.
Sure, absolutely. Mrs. Miller? Okay. Okay. Who did I miss? I put myself down. Got Jason, Tamika, Kirsty. My math is off somewhere, guys. It's probably time for a break. You say it. Jason was a yay. Tamika is a yay. Christy is a yay. Stephen is a no. Jim is a no. Christy is a no.
So it's tied. So don't vote.
We'll have to wait till our new member gets seated, I guess.
Right.
Our first task
Oh,
for
yeah.
any board member can be to
dunce
break
cap
the
on. I'm like,
impasse.
well, wait, how are we tied? And I keep just going through the
Welcome.
round.
We have a question for you.
I think I just came up with an interview question. Yeah.
All right, so we will pause here. Mr. Weedman?
Yep, so in the interest of staff not wasting their time listening to us, those that don't need to stick around can go home. So Mr. Walk, Mrs. Lorenzo, Leslie.
Everyone but me.
The
rest of you can
got
go.
to stay. And the
Sue,
and
and
the
I
tech
need,
guys
yeah,
gotta
I need, yeah, Sue and our tech guys, the rest of you will see you tomorrow. Thanks.
Everybody else can go home. There's no need for you to listen to this drone on. Yep. And I need to go back.
Have a good night. So we just have one more actual resolution, and then the rest is amended. There's just one more resolution, and the rest are getting into like amendments and belief statements.
You can go ahead, sorry.
Okay. All right, and so we are up to our last new resolution, which is school code review. All right, so this resolution is being brought forward to make a systemic education change to the General Assembly. That would specifically focus on race, socioeconomic status, special education, and English language learners, with the goal of making sure that Illinois school code doesn't disproportionately harm students of protected classes while unfairly benefiting advantaged students. The resolution committee is recommending a do not adopt, citing that this proposed resolution was just not focused enough. It was unclear, and the focus would need to be narrowed before further consideration. Do we need discussion? Okay. Any yay votes? Yay. Yes. Okay. You're a nay. Okay, so it sounds like we are universal nay or oppose. All right, so with that, we have 3 new resolutions that we've tabled and we'll consider, we'll do some investigation and bring back at the next meeting. Next, we'll get into amending existing resolutions, amending existing positions. The first one is page 16, number 17, position statement 220, constitutional amendment on school funding. The resolution committee is recommending that we do adopt, and just as a reminder, positions are issues where beliefs are value-based. All right. Do we need to have discussion on this one? We're good? Universal, yes. Okay, universal, yes. Okay. The next one, Page 17, number 18, position statement 1.16, charter school renewal of charters. So this is concerning the local board's ability to participate in renewal proceedings as it pertains to charter schools despite the local school board funding the charter school. The Resolutions Committee recommends a do adopt position. I am a yay. Are there any nays? All right. Seeing none, you're a nay. Okay. All right, Mrs. Miller is a nay. Are there any other nays? Okay. All right, the yeas will carry, and we will vote in support of this position statement. All right, next is position statement 1.17, or 17, excuse me, it's getting late. Charter schools at-risk students. All right, this resolution is looking to hold charter schools accountable for balanced enrollment of at-risk students at state-authorized charter schools, with a special emphasis on educating at-risk students, making such language aspirational and not a requirement, really has allowed charter schools to perpetuate discriminatory practices that deter at-risk students. And these are the students that deserve premium resources, according to the Woodland School District. The Resolutions Committee is recommend a do adopt position. Do we have any nays?
I am a nay, but I want to clarify why I'm a nay.
Okay.
I do think it's important. Charter schools, and specifically the one related to Woodland, are created to innovate, and I think they need some protections to be able to operate. And I know that our charter school does reach out and try to meet the needs of at-risk students already. So that's why I'm a nay.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. The next is page 17, number 20, position statement 2.25, state authorized charter school funding. So this is not new, as I understand, but this resolution is aimed to provide more clarity, and specifically in the spirit of evidence-based funding. So this is suggesting that educating the same number of students with additional facilities, additional administration, and additional staff without additional funding from the state is unsound. The Resolutions Committee agreed and is recommending a do adopt position. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. So we have one nay. Mrs. Miller, do you want to discuss? Okay. So the support will carry from our school district. Okay. Next is page 18, position statement 2.4, funding special education programs. All right, this is a resolution to strongly encourage the state of Illinois to totally fund with new monies in a timely fashion the extra costs of educating children with special needs, to include transportation and accessibility costs, to seek changes in current practices in terms of local district funding, to include special education professional personnel. The Resolution Committee was in the affirmative for this position statement to do adopt, recognizing where the current funding level is and the increased costs associated with funding special education. All in favor? Okay, we are universally yes for funding special education. Next is new belief statements. All right. Page 18, number 22, prepare all students to succeed. So this policy would be encouraging students to complete assignments within a reasonable time frame, even after the due date, and develop guidelines as to how to score or to grade late assignments. The concern is that, having zeros or failing grades is discouraging to children. And so as opposed to having them say, my assignment is late, I'm not going to bother, this will still encourage students to complete their work on time and give them second chance opportunities. The Resolutions Committee is recommending a do adopt. All in favor? I'm sorry, any discussion? Discussion needed?
I'm curious about what you think about this, Dr. Glickman. Again, I have concerns about this, us telling teachers what how they should grade.
So, yeah, I'm stuck here because I deeply agree with this concept. For many, many, many reasons. And I think a school district can certainly make decisions, can tell their teachers, we're not going to have, what we're going to do. But I am concerned, this is another area where I'm just wondering if this is overreaching for the state to be making this kind of a policy. To me, this feels very similar to the curriculum mandates that come out.
We do have this policy where I teach. And for me, it's gone back and forth quite a bit in discussions because some of my colleagues feel that it absolves the students of any responsibility. And that's gone back and forth in many iterations for the conversation. I will tell you that in the language learning environment where I'm, operating, it has, I feel that as a teacher, I'm less constrained and more able to focus on really teaching communication rather than reserving the passing, the success to, a formative or a summative assignment in language. So I feel that if a student either has not turned in an assignment or, has not put forth the full effort on the assignment, if they have a second opportunity to engage the language that I'm teaching in a way that might be more akin to their particular learning skill set, I think this policy is an awesome way to bring students into that type of environment and make them feel like they're successful. And I don't feel constrained in my curriculum planning or my grading policy. And I still have the opportunity to, to grade a student low if they don't do anything, right? 50% is still a 50%. That's not, it's a further distance for a student who might be struggling to get from a 0 to a 70% than it is to get from a 50 to a 70%. And that, I don't think that's impacted my curriculum planning. Some of my colleagues are opposed to this because they feel that it should be a, kind of a 1-2, it's either this or that type thing. But that's just my perspective as a teacher.
And do you think that that should be within your discretion to do so?
Well, I don't have any issue supporting this belief statement.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important that the districts have that ability to have that in there, so I would support this.
And this would highlight
I
our
can
values.
support it in terms of the languages urges school districts to consider versus it's not talking about legislation even. It's talking about maybe best practice, and I would be supportive of it as this is IASB best practice versus you have to do it.
Right. Speaking to our values as a district. Mrs. Miller, was that insight? I got you, Jim. Was that insight from Dr. Mack helpful, and are you ready to vote? Yeah, I'm ready. Okay. And your vote is oppose it? Okay. And Mr. LaCroix? Okay. All right, and I am also a yay, so we would support this belief statement as a district. All right. And then the last item for discussion is an amended belief statement, page 19, number 23, the physical and mental health of students, just as we let Mrs. Lorenzo go. This belief statement is putting the overall physical and mental health of our students as prime importance. Local boards of education and school district officials should have the authority and flexibility to access state and community health services as deemed appropriate. So this would be expanding belief statement number 8 to include mental, physical, and dental examinations in addition to the already stated vision screening. As a result, the Resolutions Committee agreed that this amendment is in alignment with Illinois state law and an improvement to the belief statement, and is recommending a do adopt. Are we in need of discussion or a vote? Okay, thumbs up. Mrs. Braden? Okay, so we are universal with yays and in support of this amended belief statement. And if there are no further questions or concerns, that concludes our 2021 Resolutions Committee Report review. For your benefit, the items in current positions at mid-level of page 19 are just the current positions that are not new or being amended at this time. Mr. Wheatman, I yield the floor.
Okay. For some reason, that's going off like crazy. Next is topics for future agenda items.
So, one moment. Well, let's start with the question about seating a new board member. 'Cause I have that on my list, but I'm trying to understand how we get from here to there at the next meeting. And I will admit that I am a little unclear as to what the board's hope is regarding the interviews. So I have a few questions about that. But also, I just wanted to comment that if we wanted to push back the seating, I think we can. I'm wondering, when we first set the seating as being at the next board meeting, was that at a time that we believed that that we only had 45 days to seat? Because it looks like we have 60. Is that right, Sue? Yes, we have 60 days to seat a new board member.
Which put us at the end of October, if I remember right, correct?
No, because we, unless I'm just not counting well tonight, which is certainly possible, but we had the resignation in mid-September. I believe it was the 17th of September. So I think, check my math, but I think we could seat in November. Exactly. Correct. So the only reason I bring that up, and I could be wrong, so we want to go back and look at the math on it again, but I'm just wondering if the board would like to have 2 different nights to interview candidates. You have 9 people to interview. I was just doing the math on it, or just trying to schedule it out. Even, I know the question was raised that maybe if having a 20-minute interview, which is, it's a short interview, but even, I think you still need to have people come about a half an hour apart, right? Maybe it's a 25-minute interview with 5 minutes to take some notes and such, and sometimes people need a break in there. So to get 9 people in and have a dinner break and discuss the candidates, even at starting at 4 o'clock, which I didn't get clarity on whether you could really even do, you wouldn't be starting your discussion of the board, of the candidates until 9 PM. And I'm looking around and looking at how you feel right now, and that was starting at 6:30. So I'm just wondering if you want to do a second night.
Yes, I would prefer that.
Yes.
Okay, so can we stick with this conversation for a moment? Is that okay? Okay, so we have one night set already for next week, and I would think that there's no reason not to continue with that night. So I think we just are looking for a second night. You know, I mean, how's the evening of the 19th?
Sorry, works for me.
It appears to be okay for me as well.
Is that good?
I am not available that night, sorry.
You have a conflict? Okay. So what about the 18th?
I'm available.
That works better for me than the 19th.
Should be fine, I'll flip the soccer. thing,
Yeah,
but
Mike
we'll-
can, I'll volunteer Mike to,
So that one works? Okay, I know, I'm not available that evening. I will be out of town at a conference, so I won't be able to be a greeter, but Sue can do it. Thank you, she just waved her hand, so thank you. Okay, so we'll put a schedule together, and I'm thinking we do, 5 on the first night, 4 on the second. That gives you time to then have the conversation the second night about all the candidates. Probably you will want to save some time on the first night to discuss the candidates so that you don't forget your thoughts, so we'll have a little bit of conversation both evenings. Does that sound good? Okay.
Yep.
Sure, that actually
Yes.
still puts us on target to be able to see
Yeah.
on the 20th if we need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, that's true. We could still seat on the 20th. That's true.
So,
Okay.
I
Okay.
should probably note right now, while we're all here, I will likely be absent from the 20th meeting, that is parent-teacher conferences in my district, so
Okay.
I'm contractually obligated to be there,
We're in support of that.
elected or not elected.
Okay. All right. And then are people able to start at 6 on those nights, or do you want to start at 6:30? 6 o'clock is okay?
yep.
All right, great. We'll get them set up. Okay. So hopefully, we think we're seating the new board member still on October 20th. Mr. Wolk will be bringing an MOU for staff quarantine days. You've heard us talk about this before, I believe. He and the union have been working on this, and it's just kind of a refresh of an MOU we had last year to support our staff during this unusual time when they are needing to quarantine sometimes for their own health, for, in some very rare cases, close contacts, or because they have immediate family members who have to quarantine. So we'll be bringing that. We're bringing continuing discussion of the resolution committee, right? So there'll be a few more topics to go back to. Yep. And then, are we having more conversation next time about the student-led sustainability committee? Or is that not at the next meeting?
Depends on how far along she gets.
Okay, so you'll let us know.
Can I just,
You can let us know all the way up until the Friday before the meeting.
Sure.
Okay, so that's fine. And then potentially bringing, we have this superintendent evaluation tool. I can bring it to you as discussion if you want discussion. I can bring it to you as an action item for purchasing the tool. How would you like to have that agenda item?
I'm actually good with moving forward with a vote if everybody else is, or if we want more discussion.
Well, we can do both, right? I mean, we can have it as a voting item and discuss it ahead of time.
Right, you can always say, okay, we need more conversation, we're not voting tonight. Yeah, that's fine, perfect.
Quick update on legislator attendance. Senator Bush was not available for our October meeting, so I'm waiting to hear back about potential November meetings. So I'll keep everyone posted on that. She's got fall veto session.
That's all I have.
Okay. All right, we are up to public comments. Okay. We need a closed session?
Yes.
Yes, we do. So I need a motion to go into closed.
Moved.
Second.
Don't expect any
LaCroy,
action to come out of this, so we will, sorry, Sue. We don't expect any actions to vote on when we come out of this, so we'll be adjourning the meeting right afterwards.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Braden.
Aye.